freaking first cut. Golly. Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your round one recap for this week's Mexico Open. Joining me to break it all down, Mark Immelman is here. Hi, Mark.
How's it, Rick? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I was ranting earlier, but I've taken a breath and I'm good. Thank you very much.
That's okay. Well, we've got a worldwide leaderboard with a few South Africans in the mix already.
Yeah, well, look, we talked a little bit about it in the grass conditions, and funnily enough, I was working on the book that I'm writing a little earlier today, and the one chapter was actually, I was talking about nature versus nurture, right? And people who grow up on paspalum, perhaps, or kikuyu, they chip a certain way and they pitch a certain way because of how the club interacts with the grass. And then people who grew up on Bermuda, which lies down, it's tighter, they approach the craft a little differently. And I talked to Eric Cole about it this afternoon in preparation for next week. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. He goes, on Bermuda, I chip different to how I chip when I'm on paspalum or kikuyu and such. And so for the Saffers, they grew up on kikuyu. So when they get to some of the West Coast places, and certainly to something like paspalum, they start to feel a little comfy,
That's a comfy little nugget. Okay, we'll get to those guys, but we're going to start with the man who sprinted out of the gates early on Thursday morning. His name, Cameron Champ, who went out in 30, played a much more quiet second 9, 1 over par. When the dust settled, Mark, it was a 5 under 66, and Cameron Champ, exhibit 1,565 of why golf is so weird, has missed his previous 4 cuts, but when he shows up at Vidanta Vallarta, he turns into a different type of player.
Well, it was true to form this place. I mean, when we all talked on Tuesday, we were like, yeah, we're picking bombers because the rough is not very punitive and it's a big golf course, and a lot of the holes, especially the harder ones like 10 and 16 and such, they play into the wind. So power is a virtue. And then because the greens are just massive and they have these quadrants and sections to them, if you're going in there with shorter clubs, it makes life a whole lot easier for putting. But Cam Champ is the kind of guy like, when you see him pop up on the leaderboard, you wonder how the heck doesn't he do it all the time? And then he sort of disappears, but he's softly spoken and no one really notices. But the truth is, for as prodigious as what his power is, and for as talent as what he is, you would expect him to do this more often, but he battles a bulky putter. So, when you're fighting that, it gets kind of hard. But today was kind of the perfect day for him. And I just hope now that he kicks this on, because he does have a penchant for when he plays well, he finishes well. And if he plays poorly, he just disappears early. So maybe this is another one of those weeks,
Yeah, he's either hoisting the trophy or on the first flight Saturday morning. Those are basically
Saturday, Friday evening, bro. Sign the card and out.
Those are basically the two options. Speaking of bombers who sometimes have trouble with the putter, let's go to Tony Finau. He was the favorite to win before the tournament started, and this was almost blemish-free, Mark. Unfortunately, he doesn't make just a bogey. He makes a double at number 8, a 6 on a par 4. That was the only square, in that case, squares on the card on Thursday. He offsets it with 4 birdies. He's in at 2 under, which is going to be 6 shots off the lead.
It was an empty round. I obviously paid attention. I was watching PGA Tour live because I have the week off and I can. And he was my one and done pick. And so he was a feature group. And I thought the round it could have been really good. And then it sort of looked like he just missed a few opportunities, like on his second nine, which is the front. The first few holes are a handful, and then it opens up a little bit for you. And there's a par 5 that's, I think it's 6, maybe. He had it's over 600 yards, but it's a little wind assist. And he had his driving 3-iron in there. Came up just short, didn't convert. The next hole's the short drivable 4. He hit it just next to the green, hit a beautiful pitch and made 3. So now he's 3 under. But the last 2 holes, they're playing back into the wind. 8 is a brute. I mean, it's to me, I would say the third hardest par 4. I'd say 10 and 16 are harder. And there's room, all manner of room down the left-hand side. I don't care who you are. If you hit it in the water on the right, it's a massive miss. And he didn't just hit it in the water on the right. This thing started over the water. So he had to drop the ball back on the tee. And in the end, I thought it was a pretty good 6 that he made, because he 2-putted from 50 feet. So that was disappointing because, again, it was a round that had the makings. Then, of course, he makes a beautiful birdie on the ninth hole, his final hole, to bounce back. It speaks a bit to me as to perhaps where the game is. Because if he was really battling the swing that hard, it would have shown him up with a long iron into a quartering breeze on the ninth hole, his final hole too. He had a beautiful one to about 10 feet and converted. So it was just, I think, one of those days, and I'm expecting that perhaps he builds on the final birdie and kind of starts to accelerate tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, very valuable bounce back birdie on his final hole of the day. We'll move back towards the top of the leaderboard. Cristobal del Solar. If that name sounds familiar, Mark, it's because he shot a 57 on the Corn Ferry Tour a couple of weeks ago. He is in this event on a sponsor's invite, and he is making the most out of it. A 6 under 65. The lone bogey that he made came on the 14th. That is a par 5, but he drove it well. Top 10 in the field in strokes gained off the tee. He putted it well. Top 15 in strokes gained putting for round one. Are we seeing another young gun starting to put his name into the mix?
Well, apparently. Look, I paid attention when I saw the name, and like you, I'm like, I know this name. And then I did a little rummaging, and I saw that, hold on, this is the dude that broke 60. And I'll tell you one thing, the swing I watched on television today was a long way removed from the stuff that people had found on Twitter a few weeks ago. And he looked really sharp. I was impressed at the distance control, because it's easy on those paspalum greens where you don't get a lot of bounce forward, that if you miss a ball to come up, 20, 30, 40 feet shy, and you add wind to the mix, and there was enough to just kind of throw the cat amongst the pigeons, where he hit the ball hole high a bunch, and 65 was a heck of a day. And apparently, he's got some skill. So I'm keen to see how this whole week plays out, because this week, with a slightly weaker field, you can make some hay quickly and earn a bunch of FedEx Cup points and a whole lot of bucks. So this is shaping up to be another good time of it for him.
Yeah, and I gave him credit for being a young gun. He's younger than me. He's younger than you, Mark, but he's 30, which I don't know if we necessarily,
I could be his dad, bro. Come on now. 30. Jeez.
I'm glad you mentioned the strength of field, because I always wonder when the guys from the DP World Tour come over and they start to mix it up, how are they going to do? I think it can be kind of field strength dependent. Well, Thorbjorn Olesen is throwing his name into the ring right now. He probably had some of the top 5 betting odds for the week. He played at a 5 under 66. He rallied late with a birdie on number 6, an eagle on number 7. Those were his last couple of holes as he finished up on the front side. And he's trying to make that trip, Mark, from across the pond, grab some points, grab some money, grab a new level of status, and see what can happen in a couple of weeks.
Yes, and I commend you, because you spoke about him on Tuesday. And I was like, oh, Thorbjorn. Hadn't even been paying attention, kind of thing. And that was a really good call on your behalf. But I will say this. When I would think I was still teaching over in Europe on the European Tour then. When he was a young man, even sort of just prior to the Challenge Tour, he came out and he was the next big thing over there. There were television cameras following him all the time. They did magazine features on him. Thomas Bjorn at the time was a star, and he was talking up Thorbjorn a whole bunch. Thorbjorn, I should say. And so there's always been a lot expected of him. And I think perhaps, that's a heavy load to bear for a young man. And he came out and he's been good on the DP World Tour. But the skill, the game that he has, he's expecting, or he should have expected more than that. Then, of course, he had the mix-up on the airplane, that one international trip, and he blended some sleeping tablets with some adult beverages, and that didn't turn out very well. So it's nice to see him playing well, because he's a good guy, and he's a hell of a talent. He truly is.
66 is currently 3 shots off the lead. We will talk about that leader and those in the afternoon wave, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
The Scudetto, where the soul of Italy meets the pinnacle of calcio. Catch Serie A on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
And we're back. Okay, Mark, a couple more golfers I want to get your thoughts on here. We'll start with Patrick Rodgers, who finished up just a bit ago, 5 under 66. He made bogey on the first hole that he played, number 10, and not another one after that. Rodgers is from that, I think it was 2011 class, right, where it's Berger and Spieth and JT and all these other guys. Rodgers has this unbelievable college career, and we're still looking for that breakthrough moment on the PGA Tour.
It's such a strange game, isn't it? And look, I wouldn't be listening to me right now because I faded Rodgers on our Tuesday show.
There's still time.
Well, true. It's just Thursday. But, it really is, for me, a case of horses for courses. But he's always been good. I think if there was a knock on Patrick, he was legendary in college. I mean, he won everything he played in at Stanford. And so much was expected of him, almost like an Olesen, perhaps, that was a big load to bear. But the Patrick Rodgers I've always known has always been a big tinkerer. And when he didn't play well, it almost appeared, now I don't know this for sure, it's just me watching the PGA Tour and watching from close. It almost appeared like he'd start working on his golf swing some more. And there's an element to golf at the highest level where you sort of dance with a lady that brung you. And whereas he would try and fix his swing, it's just a case of going to play. And maybe at a place like this where he's had success, he gets there and he goes, I can just go and play. Sea Island, strangely, is the same sort of an idea. When he shows up down there, he's very good. I've called him in a playoff over there. But the way he hits it is tremendous. He's got this big, wide golf swing that's powerful. I would say if there's a little bit of a fissure, it might be on the greens. But we know he's good. This just might be his week because he hasn't had the win yet either.
Do you remember who he lost to, Mark, in that playoff at RS?
Henrik Norlander. I was there. Yes? Billy Horschel?
Nope.
Tyler Duncan? Who's in the playoff with?
Charles Howell III.
Oh, goodness, I'm getting my years all mixed up. Yeah, that was Chucky Al. Norlander was in the one the following year, I think it was.
I think that's right. Yeah. So this is event number 257 for Patrick Rodgers. 0 wins, 4 runner-up finishes. 2 of them he lost in a playoff. Charles Howell at the 2018-2019 RSM, and Akshay at the Barracuda.
I'm just impressed that I remembered Henrik Norlander from the RSM Classic.
That was a good pull too.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to get your thoughts on Vincent Norman here, Mark, because
he's good. That boy good.
Yeah, and I know you've laid eyes on him long before a lot of others have. And he unfortunately stumbled to the finish line today. He bogeyed 16, he bogeyed 17, he parred 18, which is a par 5. Still shot a 3 under 68. Still beat the field average by pretty good margin, about 2.5 shots. So he's going to be inside the top 20 heading into the weekend, heading into Friday. This dude moves it off the tee. It sounds different off his club, and I know that you've been seeing that for a long time.
Crazy. Well, he and Ludwig Oberg are like best buddies. Ludwig is apparently crashing at Vincent's apartment in Tallahassee right now. And they both play a similar game. They're really neat swingers of the golf club, strong, tall, like 6'2", 6'3", wiry. Vincent just creates a ton of speed, and he hits the ball flat, and it goes forever. And the first time I ever watched him play in college, I was like, goodness gracious me, this child is really, really sound. And beautifully, I spoke with him briefly at Torrey Pines earlier this season, and then late last season too, because he found his groove on the tour to me. Because when he got out, it was like I'm good enough, but I don't believe it. It looks to me like he's starting to believe it. And he goes, the good news is I still feel like I've got a lot of going to go. I'm not at my ceiling yet. And look, all of these players will sort of tell you that because they're always working and they want to improve a little bit, and they touch on here and they touch on there and they look at the data and then they figure, well, I must improve bunker play and stuff like this. To me, he can improve in every area of the game, but he's just raw, and he's got power, and he's the kind of guy that doesn't really back down when the pressure is up. So again, in this field, it's another place where Vincent Norman can come through a little bit, even though he's kind of got the PGA Tour win and a European Tour win.
That's right. Two wins in his last 50. himself a pretty darn good summer. The man they are all chasing, the South African, Erik van Rooyen, 63, 8 under par, and he was momentarily, Mark, on 59 watch today because he went out in 29. He holed out for eagle on number 12, the par 5. He gave one back at 15, but he was able to offset that with another birdie on 18. He is currently 2 shots clear. The only man who could catch him at this point, another South African, MJ Duffy. We'll get to him in a second. EVR put together a good one today.
Goodness gracious me. He loves Mexico, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Because he won there in the fall at Mayakoba. It was not Mayakoba. It was at the Worldwide Technologies event.
Yeah, so it's El Diamante. Or
Tiger's Place.
Tiger's Place, yeah.
Look, he's coming into his own as well. Erik has always been a neat swinger of the club, hard worker. Coming out of South Africa, he was good, but he wasn't like the pick of the litter. And he came to college in Minnesota, which for a little boy from down in the southwest of South Africa, that's a scenery change because they don't get snow down there. In fact, he grew up in a partially desert area. So he's in Minnesota, comes through college, sort of just finds his way onto the tour and works hard. And right now it looks like, after battling some injury, having surgery, having a child, he just looks comfortable right now. And he looks like Erik knows what Erik has to do to bring out his best when it means something. And that to me is too, you and I always have these dinner time conversations where the data is great. And you've taught me a lot about that. And I use it. But I wish there was a measurable that showed how guys would show up when the moment means something. And if there's something that Erik has, he's got that. When the chips are down, he'll show. Certain guys, when the chips are down, they capitulate, but Erik has got it. And look, he's clearly confident. It's a similar sort of a feel, this golf course, to where he won at the Worldwide Technologies event. So maybe, again, it's a horses for courses thing. And he loves Mexican food, apparently.
Why wouldn't he? Yeah. His countryman is the last chance for somebody to grab him. It's gonna take a long putt, and it's gonna take a birdie on his last. But MJ Duffy has a hole and a half to play. He's birdied his last 2. He's birdied 5 of his last 7. He's 6 under par and currently on the green on his second to last hole of the day. He leads the field, Mark, in strokes gained approach right now. He is top 10 in putting. Those 2 things are certainly going to go a long way.
They are. Bad news for MJ is the last 2 holes he's playing are 2 of the harder holes on the golf course.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And that's the thing about this course too. If you're finishing it the way it should be played from 1 through 18, 16 is a brutal par 4. It's sort of a sliding dogleg to the right-hand side with penalty area and out of bounds down the right, bunkered down the left. And the green is perched up, so it plays longer, and it always plays into this quartering left to right wind, the uncomfortable one for the right-hander. Then 17 is a par 3 that can play up to 220 yards straight into the wind. Then 18 is a 5 that's reachable. Here on the front side where he's finishing, 8, I mentioned it's a long par 4. It's to me like the 3rd hardest hole. Big green. You're not going to make many birdies there. And 9, you can get away with one because where the hole is cut today, everything sort of feeds in there. But still, you've got to hit yourself some sort of quality, medium to long iron. And whereas he can, because if you watch MJ play, he's got an element of Ernie Els to him. He's tall, he's blonde, big, syrupy, wide, rhythmic golf swing. And he's played well in the States. He's one of those on again, off again guys off the PGA Tour, but he's got the chops. So I'm keen to see how he finishes today and then, goes over the weekend.
Okay. Well, Josh, let's see what Vegas says about this after 18 holes in Mexico. There he is. EVR, the favorite.
Jeez. Some short odds.
Yeah, it's pretty short with a lot of golf to be played. 4-1. The next shortest odds go to Olesen, 10-1. Højgaard, 12-1. Patrick Rodgers and Valimaki, they're at 14. Cam Champ at 16. And Tony Finau also at 16. Mark, oh man, that's a lot of respect at the top of the board.
Yeah, I'm looking at the leaderboard here, and I see Lipsky, who's good. Norlander, we've talked about him. He's 6 under. Del Solar. These guys aren't even getting any love. What's going on here? Gee, whiskers. I mean, after Thursday, I find these numbers somewhat surprising. Vegas better than me, so I'll let you comment.
I don't know if I like any of these. I think actually, so Matt Wallace just finished up at 66. He's 22-1. I think that's very interesting. He has a history. The biggest outlier in Matt Wallace's career statistically is that he crushes weak field events. That's like his big thing. And here he is in the mix again. So I would probably go to Matt Wallace. But of these guys on the board, I think there is something to be said about Cam Champ at 16, or now he's down to 18-1, because you mentioned it earlier, Mark. When he's confident, when he's playing well, he has legitimate PGA Tour winning upside. And now that he's in the event, like he's in it, he's engaged. It's coming. He's going to be a part of this. I'm a lot more confident than I was, before the event, before the event started.
Yeah, and I tell you what, we on the show have made mistakes that we don't let you talk more often, because you mentioned Joseph Bramlett, and I was like, interesting. I see he's 4 under. Højgaard's 3, so he's 5 back, and that's some short odds for me too. Yeah, it's all too open. If I was advising folks right now, I'd be like, leave this stuff alone. Let's let it shake out a little bit before you put your money down.
Yeah, maybe check back in after a cut is made, because there's going to be a lot of jockeying for position come Friday night, Saturday night, and then, of course, when this thing wraps up on Sunday. The good news is we'll be here after each and every round to discuss everything that is happening in Mexico this week. For now, I want to thank producer Josh, who does all the hard work behind the scenes. That's Mark Immelman. You can find him at Mark_Immelman, and you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.